Judge Kaczmarek released his ruling just a few hours ago. The judge ruled tonight that the FDA's approval of mifepristone in 2000 was wrong. He's temporarily invalidated that approval from 20-plus years ago. So, as of tonight, this judge says mifepristone is no longer FDA approved for nationwide distribution. The judge has also decided that his order will not go into effect for another 7 days from now, giving the conservative Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and the United States Supreme Court the opportunity to stay Kaczmarek's order. The Biden White House has long indicated that it would promptly appeal any ruling that reverses mifepristone's FDA approval. And tonight, just before airtime, Attorney General Merrick Garland issued this statement, quote, "The Justice Department strongly disagrees with the decision and will be appealing the court's decision and seeking a stay pending appeal. The department is committed to protecting Americans' access to legal reproductive care," end quote. So we're going to watch to see how the Biden administration responds to this ruling tonight. But a judge in Washington State may just have provided another route for mifepristone to reach the Supreme Court quickly. Tonight, that federal judge, same level and rank as the judge in Texas, issued an injunction prohibiting the FDA from removing mifepristone from the market in 18 states. Now, that ruling is in direct conflict with the ruling from Judge Kaczmarek in Texas. So where do we go from here? As the whole country grapples with this major access issue, what does the FDA do now? What does the federal government do now? And I know just who to ask. Joining us now are Mini Tamaraju, the president of NARAL Pro-Choice America, and Laura Jarrett, NBC News senior correspondent. Mini and Laura, thanks for joining us tonight. Laura, let me just start with you. We've just had this response from the Department of Justice. And even before we had that, we have this thing that we don't normally see. On the same day, minutes apart from each other, competing rulings that are applicable to the same agency.
Yes, and arguably in conflict, but perhaps not in conflict everywhere. That's one of the issues, is how is the FDA supposed to abide by both of these rulings? Kaczmarek obviously put his out first, essentially saying the FDA, you do not have the authority to do this. I'm putting it on hold. However, I'm not going to give the plaintiffs exactly what they wanted, because what they wanted was a nationwide injunction immediately. And so instead, he's saying, I'm going to give the Justice Department a little bit of time to get its ducks in a row and try to go to the Fifth Circuit, the Court of Appeals, and try to get my order put on hold. So as of right now, people should understand this drug is still in circulation. It's not being removed from the market. I think it's important for our audience to understand that. However, as you pointed out, then a different judge just minutes later says, no. Wait a minute. Actually, the drug should stay in circulation. It should maintain the status quo. So, for instance, what happens if in 8 days from now, Judge Kaczmarek in Texas, his order actually goes into effect? So in a place like, for instance, Illinois, which is a party to the Washington lawsuit, what is the FDA supposed to do? How is it supposed to comply with both of those orders? And that's why the Justice Department this case is almost immediately headed to the Supreme Court, because it's going to have to reconcile these things.
Mini, I want to just ask the practical question first, because one can't pre-plan an abortion, but one can pre-plan to have mifepristone. Should people be getting it now? Should they be talking to their doctors and hanging on to it? It is a particularly safe drug. I do pre-plan my Tylenol stocking in my house.
You know, Americans should be pre-planning their reproductive health care. Absolutely. Stock up on Plan B, the morning after pill. But yes, on mifepristone. In fact, Washington State, in anticipation of this, they filed that case. Their AG, they've been stockpiling mifepristone too. It's an important point, Allie, because look, in these times, you need to make sure you're ready and you're prepared to protect yourself. And we know mifepristone has been safe for over 2 decades. It's safer than Tylenol, and it's been a critical way to get very safe access to abortion care, regardless of where you're at. But I think the most important thing that I want to make sure folks understand about this case is this was an effort at a backdoor national abortion ban. Opponents of abortion have not been able to pass a national abortion ban. Supreme Court could only ban abortion in states that were willing to do so. And this was a way for them to get at abortion access, the most popular, effective, and safe abortion access in all 50 states. You pointed that out. It's very alarming, and it is the core issue, I think, at this moment.
Laura, what's the reasoning behind the argument that the FDA doesn't have the authority to approve this drug? I thought the FDA has authority
It's
to
really
approve
more
drugs.
that they went about it the wrong way. It's not that the FDA doesn't have the authority to approve drugs. It does that every day. And I don't think that the plaintiffs, I don't think their argument is really that. I think their argument is more you didn't take into account the safety concerns that we have asserted. And the judge has bought into that wholesale. This opinion is chock through of language that makes it very clear the judge is totally on their side in that regard, on that issue and a number of other issues. But obviously the Justice Department has put forth a litany of evidence to suggest that this drug is safe and effective. And it has said basically you don't get to second guess the FDA's authority on that. Again, this has never been done before. It has never been the case that a federal judge has essentially told the FDA what to do about a drug that it thinks is safe over the objections of the FDA.
Interestingly enough, Minnie, the FDA doesn't take other countries' research when it comes to drugs. It conducts its own research on every drug that is released. But this drug, I believe, was invented in France in, maybe I'm making this up, in 1980 or something. It's been a long, long time, and it is widely used across Europe. And its efficacy and safety have both been heavily researched and proved.
Yes, there were extensive trials when this was first introduced in the United States. The reason why, and you pointed it out in your intro, this case finally got airtime with Matthew Kacsmaryk. He is a Trump-appointed judge. He is an extremist with ties to extremely conservative evangelical organizations like Liberty Institute. This organization, as you said, they created a new organization in Amarillo just to get in front of him because there have been efforts for decades to undermine the FDA's authority here. But it's been tested. It's been trialed. It's been on the market for over 2 decades. So look, at the end of the day, that may have not been the intent of the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, the organization that was made up to file this case to undermine the FDA. But it's so important to note that that is exactly what would happen. And even if you don't care about abortion, and we know the majority of Americans do care abortion and are with us on this issue, including 49% of Republicans are with us and wanting to see medication abortion approved. Even if you don't care about abortion, the fact that this would undermine decades of FDA authority is chilling and should affect every single American. Everyone should be outraged. We've seen really strong statements from the DOJ, the president, the vice president, the Democrats in Congress. And I think it's really important to note the Dem AGs and Dem governors are already saddled up and ready to fight. And it's going to be really critical what happens in the next couple of weeks.
Right. The Dem AGs are the ones who actually brought that case in Washington. Laura, I don't like to wade into your lane, but there was something interesting that the judge said, Judge Kacsmaryk. He said the FDA has faced significant political pressure to, quote, increase access to chemical abortion, what we're calling medication abortion. It's almost like he was saying part of his ruling was to give the FDA cover from what he says is the pressure that they are facing to increase access.
I'd like to see his evidence.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how that works.
It's interesting. You know, a lot of these arguments are not even arguments that the plaintiffs' groups made.
Right.
You know, at the hearing on this weeks ago, he was almost offering different arguments, ways to knock this down that the groups themselves hadn't even put forth. It's just interesting how much sort of advocacy you saw from the judge on some of these issues. Obviously, he would say, look, I'm the judge, and I think I got the law right. It doesn't matter if the plaintiffs got the argument wrong. But typically, the plaintiffs have to be the one to raise the issue in the first instance.
That's why I thought that was strange. He was sort of offering them a sort of a fig leaf. Minnie, without mifepristone, there's a second drug. It's generally given in a 2-drug cocktail for slightly different purposes. Mifepristone was initially approved for a different purpose when it was first invented. Without the access to mifepristone, the second drug can still work. Tell me about that, its efficacy, and why it hasn't been targeted the same way.
Yeah, actually, we were surprised it hasn't been targeted the same way. And I think we should be worried and paying attention to make sure it's not up next. But misoprostol is the second drug. You can have an all misoprostol protocol for abortion. It is definitely still available. And we want to make sure folks know that they can request that drug as well, the same way you said folks can go out and reach out to their doctors about making sure they have access to mifepristone, particularly in the next week. That being said, we believe firmly Americans and doctors and providers should have the right to provide any kind of medication abortion or any kind of abortion care that is legally that is legally allowed. Mifepristone is the most popular because the mifepristone and misoprostol cocktail, as you said, is frankly the most. It's the easiest. It is the least painful. It is the most comfortable for the majority of patients, if that makes sense. And it is the preferred protocol by the majority of providers. So look, technically, yes, you can still get a medication abortion care after this decision, should there not be a stay. That being said, we should have the right to have access to the best protocol for us, for our bodies, that our providers want us to have. And this is the most popular procedure, the most popular care in abortion care, over 50%. And the fact that it's being taken away in this manner is, frankly, a threat to abortion care and a threat to reproductive freedom. And the nature of this case and the fact that it got in front of this one specific judge in this very, very problematic way is an overall indictment on our courts, and overall raises a lot of questions about judicial ethics that we're going to dig into with our friends in Congress in the next coming weeks.
I just think it's worth noting, it's not just about abortions. Mifepristone is used to manage miscarriages, right? And so it's sort of, these decisions sort of expose the slippery line between how we talk about abortions and how we talk about managing miscarriages. But we talked to doctors leading up to when we thought this decision might come out weeks ago, and one of them told me, look, like, more women are going to die as a result of this because you can't manage abortions properly. You get infections, you get sepsis. We've all seen the horror stories. And so it's just worth noting, I think, for the judge, this is, he's obviously couching it in the terms of abortion, and that's certainly how these groups have styled it and certainly what they're interested in. But for many, many women who have taken mifepristone to manage miscarriages, this disrupts their access as well.
All through a big block of states in the South, a miscarriage now makes every woman and their doctor fear that they might get prosecuted if they're having a miscarriage. There are women who won't seek the care for a miscarriage because they're worried that there's someone looking to prosecute them.
And doctors who won't prescribe the drugs because they're worried about getting sued.